look at this transformation. I mean, we're talking now, how many days until January 6th? I think we put it someplace, right?
I don't know, about 45?
45 days till D-Day, which is January 6th. We've got it on, I think, how do I make this move? Caitlin, how do I make this move? Down here?
Down here.
All right. There we go. Look at, isn't that cool? Here we go. Here's our.
Do you want me to?
Oh yes, Jill, you can do that. I'm good at talking. You're good at
walking. Queen of PowerPoint.
Yeah, Queen of PowerPoint. There we go. So, I was also going to start this off a little bit before we go into this kind of stuff. We asked you to give us some questions, and we thank you very much for sending them. But I have a few for you to start off this appropriate, since this is Chill and Chat with Jill and Pat. I feel like a DJ, and I have to have a little banter here before we start the real stuff. So put up with us. It is all you've got to do right now. So the first question we have for you is, why do seagulls fly over the ocean? Okay, that's the first question. If you have an answer, type it down for us. We also want to know if you know what Michelle Obama's favorite vegetable is. And last but not least, we'd also like to know what you call a fake noodle. So those are your three questions. You will be graded at the end to see if you have a lighthearted vision for today and the future. If you get the answers to those questions correct, you will receive a prize. Yet to be determined, but yet you will get a prize. So again, that was why
was that we were going to write the proposal for them.
Oh, don't tell them. Okay. So seagulls, why do they fly over the ocean? What is Michelle Obama's favorite vegetable? And what do you call a fake noodle? Okay, those are your three questions to banter around with your staff and yourselves, and in the chat box send us an answer and we'll take a look at it. We will, for those who stay till the end, give you the answers to those questions, along with the rest of the questions that you proposed for us. So let's take a look here. The timeline, as you well may be aware, is all the things that have come up. We now have this May 27th, and indeed it's 51 days. Caitlin did the for us. 51 days till January 6th when your transformation proposal needs to be submitted. Well, we are aware at this time, because people have asked us, how many proposals have been submitted. At this point in time, we've been made aware by OPWD that there have been 6 that have been submitted. All 6 have received some initial review, or there's a plan for a conversation by phone with one of your colleagues around it. When asked for them to share the feedback that they gave, they instead allowed us to contact agencies that had submitted it. I must say that not a lot of feedback was given to those organizations, and it also is why we're doing what we're doing today with you guys, this chill and chat idea and conversation, because people are still asking the same kind of questions or not quite sure how to play this all out. So while I don't have the definitive, nor does Jill, on exactly how is this all supposed to play out, I think we're reinforcing that this is a proposal. It is not the drop-dead document for the very last thing that you'll ever write or submit to OPWD. And as I've shared, and I know Jill has shared with people that she's been visiting with, it's a plan for a plan, okay? So with that in mind, let's go forward here and take a look at our next slide, please.
And before we move on, I just want to bring your attention to up here. You can click here to download a copy of the May 16th guidance document. It's a little difficult to find online, so we're not really sure if OPWDD sent this to you guys in an email or sent you hard copies, but we have been able to get a digital copy of it for you, and you can download it here. If you have any trouble accessing it, just shoot me an email and I'll get you a copy.
So, hopefully, most, if not all of you have spent some time looking at our infamous Employment Supports Assessment Tool.
Employment Supports Transformation Assessment
Tool. Sorry, I get it all wrong. That's why Jill's here. So, go ahead. Go through this for me, will you?
Okay, so what we developed as part of a BIB-funded grant was an assessment tool that was designed to really help agencies walk through each of the areas that are required as parts of the proposal that OPWDD is requiring. And if you look at this list here, which is the the requirements in that proposal, you'll see that it's very person-centered, it's very specific, and these areas are all hit upon in our employment supports transformation assessment. So if you download that and you work on that as a team, I think you'll almost have your whole proposal written. You'll have the, at least some raw materials for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out, and this is based on meeting with a number of agencies and also working in the field a long time, if you look at these...
Yes, let's just put it on the phone. She's a social worker, so she cares. I'm the rehab counselor. We get it done. Together, you can't beat us as a team. So keep that in mind if you need help, okay? Go ahead. Makes sense.
I care about getting it done, Pat.
I know, but you remind me to look at it from a different perspective. It's okay. Go ahead.
You remind me that we have to get it done. We can't just talk about it.
There you go. See, it works.
But I want to bring your attention to each of these areas because, you know what, you're already doing these things. So when you're working on the proposal, think about how you're doing them and what you need to tweak as you move forward into this new world without work centers.
And when Jill says without work centers, let me remind everyone that there are three there were three existing, the newest one being the Workforce Innovations Opportunity Act, but there were three existing federal legislation pieces. The Americans Disability Act, the Olmstead decision that went along with that, and the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. There is no language whatsoever in any of those documents that say you cannot forever, ever, ever, never use a 14C wage, which is in essence the definition of how someone decides a work setting should be called a sheltered workshop, correct? So one of the things I shared with an agency I was with yesterday is your organization can truly decide that you want to continue to provide a traditional sheltered workshop environment. And you're all looking at each other and going, what the hell is Dell saying? The reality is that there's nothing from the federal government right now that says that you can't do that. What's happening here in New York, and is certainly in and amongst the Workforce Innovations Opportunity Act language, are the hoops that you have to jump through in order to justify that people, as Jill was saying before, the person-centeredness that is an expectation now in our field, have truly understood or had the opportunity to explore and do understand the choice that they're making. Hence, not to turn into the situation that we saw in Rhode Island, where people, students were graduating from high schools across Rhode Island, which of course is not very big, but there's enough, graduating, individuals with disabilities, and the only choice they were given were to go to the one and only sheltered workshop in one of the counties in Rhode Island. That's unacceptable. And I don't think there's a person on this call that wouldn't disagree with that. That's just unacceptable. So it is imperative as you're designing whatever the future of your service menu will be for your agency to consider the choice factor. So these proposal requirements ultimately get at thinking through every piece of the puzzle that will be the future of your service design menu at your organization. It is not just about the sheltered workshop. Everything on this list is a cross-systems approach to what your organization will do. Some of them are much more targeted at the employment services that you might want to offer. But you may not choose ultimately as an organization to offer all. Or you may decide to stay and just be a sheltered workshop provider. If you choose that option, then later in 2020, and even probably more like 2019, some things might fall off of the shelf that you're no longer able to access as an organization. And of course, the biggest thing is Medicaid. You're going to have to meet the expectations of the home and community-based settings rule. And that is what the proposal questions get at, you telling them how you're going to meet those expectations. So I just want to make sure that people understood that you indeed can opt to do exactly what you're doing now. But I think as the years progress and changes are coming, that it'll be more difficult for you to use some of the other funding mechanisms that will be available. And unfortunately, New York is not moving away anytime soon from Medicaid supporting especially people with developmental disabilities, but now even in behavioral health with the, the move and much bigger move to managed care and the HARP and the home and community-based wage services that are going there, Medicaid, again, is now is front and center as the benefit
Medicaid rehab option as well.
Right, exactly. So, okay.
So I think right now we're going to move into looking at some of the questions that were submitted to us by all of you. The first question, which came from Darcy at Abilities First, he's asking about getting buy-in and an understanding from the board of directors and staff currently in the workshop. This is a huge part of transformation because if you don't have understanding and cooperation and collaboration, not just from your board of directors, but from every single person who's being impacted by the transformation, it's going to be really hard going. We, over here on the right, we're referring you to one of the webinars that we offered as part of Transformation 2.0, which is keeping board members on board. That was offered by Loeb and Chopra, and it speaks specifically to how to talk to the board of directors, how to give them some insight into all of the different aspects of the transformation. In addition to that webinar, I would encourage you to look at the webinar that was offered by Jennifer Monty, which goes over each of those areas that Pat was talking about, the ADA, Olmstead, and WIOA, and really discusses how that fits in with the whole move to more integrated employment supports for people.
Have any of you guys that are on the phone, since this isn't meant to be a talking head, and I'm not getting paid like Ellen does to run this show today, have any of you actually made a presentation to your board that you might want to share and how it went? Certainly when I was out at Onondaga ARC recently, Ellen Gutmaker, the exec there, invited each time a different board member to come to the presentation that I was working with leadership staff around. And they had some really cool questions. They don't underestimate their connections and their interest and value to this process. So I was just wondering if there's anybody out there in our webinar land there that might want to tell us a little bit about one of your experiences with boards, both positive and negative, because if there's certainly something negative that we need to address with OPWD, Jill and I are both open to that conversation. So, anybody? Challenged by it? Want to share it? And you don't have to address who you are if you're not comfortable with that.
Pat, I'm not sure if you can see the poll results. If you open up the control panel, I've launched a poll that asks, have you made a presentation to your board? And 71% right now, the number keeps changing, that are responding to this are saying no. And 29% have said yes. So.
And no presentation because you're still trying to figure it out, or no presentation because that's just not the way you guys do business?
Pat, this is Marie from Dutchess. Can you hear me?
I can. Go for it.
I haven't really made a formal presentation to the board, but we've certainly been updating them every month as to what we're thinking of as far as our transformation plan. So I can say that they really understand where we're going and what our plan is going to be, going forward. I haven't done a formal presentation, but I think because we've been updating people all along, they're very supportive.
Cool.
And we're having family meetings coming in up in a couple weeks, and we have invited the board to come to those so that they can show their support of our plan.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, because when people talk, that's what my brain starts doing. If there was an interest in having something that we designed for the board members, around some of the nuances that are happening in this changing environment of Medicaid and whatnot, that we would, I know personally I'd be willing to run it even, like 5, 6 o'clock at night, which is when your board meetings, it might be a little bit early, but I'm just saying, please let us know. Send Jill and I an email. Yeah, Pat, that sounds like a great idea. We'd love to be able to, host our board meetings and pick, a date. And because, of course, the webinar will be archived. So even if you couldn't make it or your board couldn't make it on that date, we could create the webinar such that you could then run it, and maybe we make it a 30-minute one so it's not an over, an hour kind of thing, but, just something where we could highlight some of the things that Jennifer said about that, or bring in the Loeb-Troper pieces there that are focused on what board members can and should be thinking about in this transformation. So if you think that's a good idea in regards to a new tool that you could use to help you do things, and the kinds of things that you'd like to have them be told in this webinar, feel free to help us shape it. I would love to bring that as a new idea for this process. We've not gone there because we thought you had it under control. Go ahead.
It's Mary Ann at Gateway in Helen.
Yeah. Yes. Hi.
How are you? So I wanted to let you know that what we did early this year is we actually did have Lori Kelly come from Loeb-Troper and do a presentation to our board, not just about transformation, but also about just all the changes in our world. And I think that certainly, and it was good to do it early in the year, kind of, obviously started to set the path that we're going on. And like Marie, in talking about, this is happening, we're working on it, not in great detail, but we've been kind of talking about it as we've been going through the year, and which is leading all up to the fact that on this Saturday we are doing our strategic planning that actually Lori Kelly is facilitating for us.
Terrific.
So I think it's been helpful.
For those of you who haven't talked to your boards yet, or what are some of the issues that are standing in your way? What are your concerns? Because if we could maybe share them and talk about ways that other providers have overcome those, or even if you can bring our attention to tools that might be useful for you that we could provide, that would be great.
Okay. So you all have our emails. It's just jill@nyrehab.org and pat@nyrehab.org. So feel free to send us a note and let us know what you need, and we will work to get it together for you. Okay, the next question, thank you for contributing to the conversation. If our proposal is approved, would we be able to open the workshop to new enrollees? Well, my first reaction is, it depends on what your proposal said you were going to do, because as I was saying in the opening, you may not have a workshop anymore. I'm recommending highly that if indeed your organization is making a choice to meet the expectations of the community-based integrated settings rules, you will no longer refer to your entity as a workshop, because that would be total counterintuitive to the idea of the integrated business model that's being proposed in this endeavor with OPWDD. Therefore, and they would also not be enrollees. People will be employees in your new business. That is the expectation of the integration opportunity that is being asked for in your design. So, answer to the question is yes and no. And I don't mean to be snotty about it, but the reality is, if you are choosing to keep it as a workshop, yes, employees can be, people can be enrolled in your program, probably to about 2019, and then you're not going to have any Medicaid money available to you to do any kind of things that were done in workshops in the past. If that's what you're choosing to do, that's great. If indeed you're changing up what is happening in your business model and you're going to meet the expectation, hence the proposal has been approved, you will then be able to employ new people and the sky's the limit for you. Questions, comments about that? Yell at me, I don't care.
Or if you don't want to yell really loud, you can type a message in the chat box.
Okay, next question. Should we stay certified or go to non-certified? Can we still do sub-minimum wage? Can we still bill for site-based pre-voc?
These are all really big questions.
And I'm going to tell you that I think Jill and I can give you our opinion, but we are not going to go on record as saying yes, yes, and no or anything like that to these questions. Should we stay certified? Interesting. Should we? That's going to be your choice in regards to whether or not, again, you are anticipating offering yourselves, that entity that you now become is still willing and interested in offering a service funded by Medicaid by yourself. So if your new HR component of your business intends to also hire and provide through those staff Medicaid waiver services, then you will need to stay certified. If your company instead chooses to not, under the same umbrella, offer a Medicaid service, but instead you have separated the business from the Medicaid provision process, you could go non-certified. Does OPWD have that figured out yet? Absolutely not. So, is that a question that you could write in your proposal as we are not sure yet? Absolutely. Remember, it's a plan for a plan. So it actually, in any of the questions within the proposal, it doesn't ask you to even decide whether you will be certified or non-certified. So I would honestly keep that to the side in a parking lot kind of question list for us, and we'll see if we can get some more specific answers from OPWD as they continue to to get this together. Can we still do sub-minimum wage? Yes.
As long as there is a C-14 certificate, there's no plans, concrete plans, there's discussion about discontinuing that, nothing concrete.
That's right. And can we still bill for site-based pre-voc? There is, right now, as someone reminded me the other day, only an ADM for pre-vocational services. Under that, you are offering either a site-based pre-voc service or you were offering a community pre-voc. We had a smaller work team get together. I should have that document out to everybody to take a look at in regards to some recommendations that we think should be considered before that final ADM is released. It has not been released yet. They're still working on it. So can we still bill for site-based pre-voc? My answer to you will be, indeed, there will be the capacity to do that. Do they have all the bells and whistles figured out yet? Absolutely not. But again, I want to encourage you, and Jill and I were chatting about this before we got started, that the intent behind this transformation is to consider and figure out how not to have Medicaid be the major source of your revenue. When I see these questions, that question that says it's still about site-based pre-voc, I'm concerned that you guys are still building business plans where that dollar amount is instrumental to your success as an integrated business idea. It will be certainly an instrumental and important piece if you're going to be more of a clinical service provider as your new business model versus an integrated business model that's offering people employment. It's the two entities you've got to make a decision about.
So can I put in a social work thing here?
Absolutely, go right for it.
So when you're discussing this in your proposal, I think you can kind of circumvent the things you don't know or you haven't decided by using words like considering, we're exploring this option, we're looking at this, and then you can talk about the areas where you're still seeking clarification. And seeking clarification is what we need to do from OPWDD. The other point I want to make is when we talk about the HCBS services, as Pat says, you're talking about them as funding sources, but what are they really? These are services that are designed to benefit the deficits that people may have around employment. So when you're thinking about how you're going to manage your business, you're going to have a business, you're going to employ people with disabilities, and if you have a non-certified business, you're going to also have the capacity to provide HCBS services in a non-certified site. What Medicaid is saying is you just don't wrap the whole Megillah into one place, which is institutionalized.
Right.
So when you think about these services, it's not the money that you're looking at that you're getting. They're not a way for you to make a profit, but they are a mechanism for you to help the people that you're serving and that you're providing services to in your agency.
Pat and Jill, I don't know if you guys got to this or not, but I stepped away for a sec. But Katie Demuse posed this: when we become an integrated business, is it still possible to have pre-vote groups involved in the business, parentheses, temp labor for the business under 14C?
You know, I don't think that's a question that we can answer,
Yeah.
but I think that's something that...
Can you send that one to me in an email, though? Because part of what we're also looking at, this is our first venture here, but we've got a date of December 6th. When's the next one?
5th, I think.
Just December 5th or 6th. It's on the last slide. We'll get there. We're going to do another one. So any of the questions that have been posed today to us, we're giving you our opinion, and then we're going to literally take each one of them without the notations of who sent it, so don't worry, and ask Ceylon and Ceylon Myers-Ruff and Mary Pellman to get us some answers, okay? So.
And I also, you know, I think that some of our consultants can help with questions like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because a lot of what you're asking really has to do with the corporate model that you're using.
Yep. Now, one little other sidebar here, can we still, with the sub-minimum wage, under Section 511 of the Workforce Innovations Opportunity Act, we heard a couple weeks back from Michelle Barlow at Access VR, there's now a requirement, when I was talking about the hoops you have to jump through to keep paying sub-minimum wage, there are rules for students and what they have to have, and there's got to be information documented. That's a whole piece in there that you should take a look at. There's also, though, for those individuals who are presently receiving a sub-minimum wage, a new requirement on Access VR to actually provide each person vocational counseling around that choice. We heard from Michelle that they've got a guideline of their own to try to get out there. They're not talking about opening everybody's case, so don't freak out. They're not talking about even inviting all of them to consider that. They're talking about potentially coming to your site and actually creating some kind of small group type of environment where the vocational counselor, the rehab counselor from the local regional office would host an opportunity to talk about the world of work and the things that typically a VR system is engaged in. We do not have a sense of when that will take place. They are thinking about actually having us ask all you guys around the two basic big questions is how many people with a primary diagnosis of developmental disabilities, behavioral health, and or physical disabilities are presently enrolled as participants in your sheltered workshop and reported to the USDOL under your 14C certificate. They're trying to get a sense, obviously, of how many people, because the law now says that they have to actually talk to each and every one of them, and there has to be documentation that that took place. Otherwise, your organization can no longer, as of July something, and I forget the date, I apologize, but July of 2017, continue to pay them sub-minimum wage. So while this is sounding like a hassle and a half, if indeed you want your work setting to continue to be able to pay people at a sub-minimum wage, we have to work together with Access VR, so there'll be more news about that to come. If you have questions and ideas around any of this, please feel free to share that. And shortly there probably will be a 3 to 4 question type survey that we're going to send out on behalf of the work that they need to get done to make sure that it flies right. You know, it isn't just them telling you what they're going to do, but they really want to make sure you guys give them some ideas of what could work group-wise at your sites. So more news on that one. Okay.
Pat.
Yes, please.
Pat.
Yes.
This is Nancy from Cat County.
Yeah.
I heard you say that if we want to bill for a waiver service, we would need to stay certified. So I was confused then.
Well,
and I probably misunderstood.
no. What I meant is, thank you. If Cattaraugus County ARC decides that it will be running a business under the same roof as your waiver service operation, then that space would need to stay certified. That's what I believe to be the truth. I am going to get that clarified, because certainly as a non-certified site, a person who works for you can receive a service. The question becomes, if you are also the service provider, how will that all jive, right?
Okay, that's what we've been wondering, right?
Absolutely, and you're not alone, and so are Jill and I still trying, and that's why I don't think we have an ADM yet or any other big questions, because how do you do this? So, again, I'm going to encourage you to the best of your ability, and you've heard me tease about, and we were just talking again about the 12-step recovery program for Medicaid, how to take your Medicaid hat off during this discussion. I know it's hard because it is honestly in some cases, upwards to 50% of your income. But any good business person will tell you that you need to diversify your income in order to cover your expenses, because if all of a sudden the bottom falls out and you don't have the ability to bill Medicaid anymore, then what will happen? So if you can take your Medicaid hat off and truly look at the business at hand, if one of the businesses that you're honestly going to still be in is the provision of clinical services, it needs to sit over here while whatever the widget works is that's going on here plays out. And then how do you bridge the two together? And we do, through the grants, have the opportunity with the work that we're doing with the manufacturers,
Manufacturing extension partnerships.
There you go. The MEPs that we've connected with, you've heard us, Rob Oram talk, and Everton Enrique's talk around the kinds of things that they're doing around business development. That's the kinds of opportunities we can help there too. As well as you've got Barclay Damon, you want to highlight that for them?
So this is a webinar which you can access on the transformation site on the NYSER website. And that really looks at it's an exploration from a legal perspective of your choices when you're trying to decide how you're going to build your new corporate structure. And in thinking about it, again, this is probably really social working, but this is how I think about it. And to me, this works. I work here at NYSER. I don't see my doctor here. I don't get blood work here. If I need to go to a doctor, I go somewhere else. So when we talk about that separation, you can maintain a certified site where people can come to get services, or you can take those services and push them into a non-certified site at a separate location. And later on in this, in our discussion, I'm going to give you the links to look at the settings rule that Medicaid has issued, which is really, it's pretty straightforward and clear about what Medicaid thinks of as a non-certified integrated setting.
Okay.
So any more discussion on this before we move to the next question? And we're just basing this on questions that were already submitted, so if you guys have other questions, please raise your hand.
Like Nancy just did. That was
like perfect. Nancy did, or type them in.
Okay, I think this question, and Allison, if you're on, and I see you are from the list there, if you're on and would like to give us any more specifics of what you're looking for, workshop transformation proposal requirements and formatting. We've given you the link, so you have that. Formatting, that's an interesting dynamic. Some people are choosing to literally go question by question and answer the question. If you use the assessment tool through the project, you will not only answer the question, but you'll get some real strategic thinking going on that goes along with that, because it really means a lot to pull your team together, and it isn't just a team from the work center. I would suggest highly that it's a team of leadership and others from across the systems. Working with Schoharie yesterday, I had in the room folks from their fiscal office, I had folks from their day services, people that were engaged in the HR component of their entity, and as well as the leaders in the work center. Because any changes that happen in one part of your organization have a domino effect on all the other things that are going to go on. If you are considering your business having 2 shifts, and the majority, like in their case, the majority of the people that they support are also people that they support in homes that they run, hello, then they've got to revisit how they might have to staff their homes or create the transportation opportunity in their rural counties. The formatting of this, it's not a grant. It is meant to be an opportunity to answer questions. It's really up to you guys how you want to do it. There's no direction being given by OPWD other than they're seeking the answers to the questions.
I think Friday is ridiculous.
Hello, someone's talking and you forgot you're not on mute. So, thank you. I just don't want to get into your personal conversation. That's okay. So anybody have any questions? Allison, did I capture that okay for you?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay. If you need other help, just let us know. Okay?
And also, you know, when you're writing this, be very specific that you're addressing the questions that they're asking. So they've given you headlines or little, you know, topic areas. If you think about this from OPWDD's perspective, they're going to be reading probably about 80 of these at some point. At least. So
put emojis in there. No, I'm just teasing.
Let's say more, but make sure that you use the language and the words that they've given you to use, so that they know you're responding to their questions and they don't have to sift through what you've said to find the answers, because most likely they won't sift. They're just going to send it back to you and say you didn't answer this question when you may have actually answered it very specifically but not highlighted it for them.
I would also offer, I personally am willing, and I'm assuming Jill is cool with the idea, if you have drafts of your proposal that you'd like us to weed through to make sure that they're clear. A couple of times now I've read a couple and they're amazing. The questions create opportunities for repetition in the answers. So with that happening, I kind of critique it and go, why don't you respond this way? Or maybe you'll suggest, you know, by a certain date, because as Jill was pointing out, if you've not made any final formal decisions on what will happen or won't happen, which is totally appropriate from my perspective as a business planning model that takes usually 3 years to get someplace. You know, any strategic plan typically over time is developed and things change, and we have a new, you know, potentially new president coming in January. So, you know, who knows what's going to play out. So by a certain date, we will get this done. We are considering, as Jill said, there's not a need for you to be definitively ending unless you have something you know for sure you're definitely going to do. So hopefully that helps in looking at that.
Sorry, I got 2 other questions that have just come through in the questions box.
Great.
Sally Hawley is wondering, in order to continue to pay under the 14C certificate, would a provider who decertifies and no longer offers site-based pre-voc continue to need to maintain the certification for day training to be a qualified community rehab provider?
Whoa. Say that one again. Right, read it slow with me.
In order to continue to pay under the 14C certificate, would a provider...
Wait, stop there. There is a 14C certification by the U.S. Department of Labor is capable. You are capable as both a not-for-profit and a for-profit entity. So you're talking certification. Certification at OPWD has nothing to do with 14C. It has to do specifically with if you meet the home and community-based settings rule, you then are able to continue to bill for Medicaid. careful we're not putting things together that don't need to go. That 14C triggers, 14C payments trigger whether or not then your setting has been approved to meet the home and community-based settings rule. That's all that does. If it meets it, then you still have to decide whether certification means that you're going to, your agency running the business as well as running the service are going to do them in the same place.
So when you run, if you're running a separate business, you're going to need to run that business based on Department of Labor rules.
Right.
That's one aspect of what you need to be looking at. Then if you're going to provide HCBS services
From your supported employment,
from your supported employment, you're going to need to meet the rules that are set by CMS, Medicaid, and Medicare.
Right.
So you have two different entities that you're working with and you need to balance.
Yeah. Go ahead, finish the rest of the statement.
Okay. Would a provider who decertifies and no longer offers site-based pre-voc continue to need to maintain the certification for day training to be a qualified community rehab provider?
Qualified community provider under who, Sally?
Sally, if you have a microphone on your computer, feel free to unmute yourself and jump on in. Or you can type your question again into the question box.
My reaction to qualified is a terminology that came under the behavioral health piece. A qualified provider has nothing, again, to do with certification under the DD if you're worried about working for the behavioral health side of life. Those two are separate again.
No worries, Pat. Sally just typed in and said you have already answered. I don't have a mic. So there you go.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right. I have
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more that came through. Darlene Cuppernall. She said one of the proposal questions relates to the use of LTSE. What are others thinking about on how to use this funding? Will it be a one-time use or will you continue for a few years? Will it continue for a few years?
Okay, that's a slide that's coming up, so we'll jump to that now because we're going to get there anyway. We're going to be fun. The next one is cost. But go to the next slide.
Are you just
we'll do LTSE because and it'll just be duplicated. That LTSE, when we first started doing all this stuff, I was the one. Someone asked a question, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, be quiet! Don't say a word," because for years we've been trying desperately to keep that funding because it's 100% state dollars, right? It is clear, it is pure. It doesn't, people, agencies. There are still agencies that receive it. And in that process, I've come to find out that the reason that they were asking this question in the proposal is because they do get that you guys that do still receive it need it to support what you're doing. So as you write your proposals, I am highly encouraging you to identify the undeniable need of your organization continuing to have that funding for at least the next 3 years, okay? 17, 18, 19, into 20, and what it pays for and how it will pay for things as you transform whatever your decision ends up being to transform. Because you don't want them taking away that money, and if they know that it is integral to the transition and the transformation, doesn't stop them from taking it away. Trust me, we went through this, Jill and I, at OMH. They took the money down. If they wanted to take the money down, they took it. But at least you're telling them, and if they approve your plan with that piece in it saying that, NYSER's going to have at least a little bit better chance of arguing you approved their plan, they told you the money was integral. How the hell are you taking it away from them? It's a shot. So I am rescinding what I said in the beginning. You need to define it, and in the idea of one shot, no such thing. Just describe what you get and why it's important and how it's integral to getting from point A to point Z, whatever that transformation idea is that you have. Now, that being said, maybe you don't know exactly what it is. You're going to sell your soul in that section about how you can't take that money away from us if you want us to get from a sheltered workshop to a fully inclusive work environment that supports people's choices towards their self-sufficiency. I mean, let them try. Well, They will, but we'll go there. So hopefully that answers your question, Darcy. Okay. The cost section here, that's where we're talking about all the different kinds of things that are happening. It is important, and Loeb and Troper has really zeroed in on this during that, and that archived webinar is available for you to open up at any point in time. You're bored at night, you can't go to sleep, you want something, no, it won't make you sleepy. But, you know, just take a look at that and note that, you know, that is the intent behind this, is to demonstrate what funding you have, what funding you need, and how you're going to make the changes. So don't be afraid to talk about costs. Now, do you need to go to every little, is there a fiscal, there is no fiscal piece in this. There's no spreadsheet that's required. There's no, you know, like a grant, tell me how much, whatever. So don't feel like you have to give the nuances of how every dime is spent in your organization. Just do it in the more global end of things and we'll be okay. And that'd be definitely something that Jill and I will be more than happy to take a look at as you describe it and you work with it. Okay? Any questions yet?
Any questions? Okay, we'll say based pre-vote be allowed.
I think we've already answered that one.
But this is, I just want to call your attention to this. This is from the Administration for Community Living. It's, you know, government arm, federal government arm. And it gives you in very clear terms what that settings rule is. And it defines what, you know, it defines what they consider a setting that isolates people. And it's a, you know, for example, what they say is a setting that's designed specifically for people with disabilities or particularly people with a particular disability. I mean, they're describing your workshop. Everyone who lives there, either people with disabilities or the staff that provides services to them. Again, in a workshop, you're primarily the workers or people with disabilities, and the people who are not disabled are there to help the people with disabilities. So I really encourage you to look at this. We're not getting a lot of clarity from OPWDD, but that's because they haven't gotten a reaction yet from CMS about what they proposed. But at least you'll see what the benchmarks are that Medicaid is looking at.
Again, taking off that Medicaid hat as best you can to look at exactly. If you know, in some ways it's almost like if you had the ability to wipe the slate clean and start from scratch, and everybody then somebody took all the things you do and kind of handed you them on a table and said, put the puzzle together. This is the opportunity that you have. It certainly feels like a challenge and overwhelming as you're doing the day-to-day stuff. And you know I always say it's real nice and it's fun for me to go to these meetings because I get to throw great ideas at you because I don't have to implement them. I get it. But if these ideas that I throw at you help and you want more assistance in thinking through it, you know where we are. Okay? So the next question is related to PPAs. PPA reimbursement of vacated workshop space. Christy, nobody's actually put that on the table in front of Ceylon. I would suggest that, again, in your proposal, as you write it, if you're believing that there's a dollar amount that you should be able to access in exchange for something, that you raise that question for a discussion with someone at the central office. I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, most PPA, and that's prior property approval for people that may not know what the PPA stands for, meaning that, you know, the piece of dollars that you get in a rate. I'm not sure exactly how that'll play out. It's been asked before in regards to the investment that you have in that space counts towards something. How is that going to play out? So Ceylon has had it addressed. I will raise this question more directly with her after this webinar to see if they can give us any more specifics. But in writing your proposal, if you believe that by a certain date you would have the availability of this vacated space and there is a property assignment to a rate that you're receiving, then you need to say, we need to negotiate this. Do not just give it back. We never give any government money back if we can get it to pay for something else. So do that, and if you need some more assistance on that, please reach out to Jill and I directly, and we'll see what we can do. But we will take this question for the good of the whole to Ceylon and see what's going on with that. Okay? Cool. All right, the next question speaks to the state dollars. Are there any other questions on this, or I think I pretty much covered that with the last one.
And I wanted to also call your attention to the second link here. As we talked about earlier, OPWDD is asking that your proposals be infused with person-centered planning. Again, this is a federal PDF, just question and answers that you can use as a guideline when you're writing your proposal. Very straightforward there.
Kate, you got a question for us?
Nope, I got nothing.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right, this next one is kind of neat, and it is a question about balancing OPWD rights for service and due process for discharge with being a business. It's a dilemma that I think all of you are facing in regards to making decisions. It is indeed a right under 633 for individuals with developmental disabilities to receive services. It does not mean, however, that they're not going to receive any service, and that becomes the question at hand I think that all of you have to deal with. I can certainly get the company answer to this, but ultimately I think Jill has shared through a couple of the other places where Jennifer Monty's webinar talks to their rights and the things that are available to people with disabilities through Olmstead and ADA. I'm concerned, and maybe Ernie, if you want to talk a little bit more about this if you're on the call, the due process for discharge and what your concerns might be, because I think those would be specifically things that I'd want to have OPWDD give all of us guidance on, if that's ultimately, I'm assuming, and that's why I don't want to assume because of what, assume means, but that you're concerned about if you or your organization builds a business and the 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 people that are presently engaged in a work environment with you can't achieve the expectations of that new business, they won't have a job. And then what will happen? I would hope that before that actually gets there, there would have been quite a bit of time spent by a counselor or a service coordinator in having discussions with those people about their interests and their desires to do things in the future. And if indeed they have aspirations to still be part of the new business, what would then the agency staff that are assigned in assisting them to reach those dreams and desires do, and not just an assumption that if you're working in the workshop now, you will ultimately always get to work here. I watched colleagues from Madison Cortland ARC who have a pretty terrific, neat business thing that they're working on, speak to parents and families members about the change that's happening at their organization, and showed the people that they were not, all the people in the audience, that while it was going to be a major change, that indeed every person that was presently receiving a service in their sheltered workshop would have time given to them to help them explore what their future would look like, and if they were interested in a job with the new business that was being designed in place of the old work center, then they would be given the supports to get them employed accordingly at the company. So they never really talked about discharge, Ernie. They really just looked at how to build the pathway for the individual towards the new business, if that was appropriate for them, or towards something else. And that is purely person-centeredness if ever I've heard one. So I'm not sure that answers the question that you've asked here, so if you need to clarify for me more specific what you're looking for, I'd be happy to take that to OPWD, but that's my sense of how they're envisioning this, is that it wouldn't be an either or and a service or a discharge, but the intent, because you have 3 years to get there, is to honestly create the pathway for the existing participants in your program towards where they're going, and maybe they will be good people for employees for your business, or if not, then they're finding jobs other places, or they're receiving other sets of services towards their interests. That's my reaction to that.
Can I give you the bureaucratic perspective?
Please, go ahead, give me the bureaucratic.
Just full disclosure, I'm a bureaucrat in recovery.
Right, exactly.
I think what we're looking at here from OPWDD's perspective is 633 regs say that you can't just say, we're not operating this workshop anymore, you don't fit in our business, so we're discharging you. You just can't do that. It's a violation of the 633 regs. So kind of segueing into what Pat has said, I think the way you're going to balance this is through that person-centered discovery process, and you have, 3 years to do that, to really talk to each person as an individual and help them to determine what it is that they want. Some people may not even want to work. They may want to retire. They may want to take that social connectedness they get through the workshop and build that into other day activities. But I think what we're talking about is that you're going to do that as a process and not simply discharge somebody with no support.
Right.
And I don't think anybody has that in mind. Mm-hmm. But that is basically where OPWDD is coming from. It's
so glad to have a recovering bureaucrat as a team member of mine. Thank you, dear.
Well, it's a hard road, but I'm working on it, Pat.
You are, and you're doing damn good. So, other thoughts, reaction from anybody? Because I know this is stressing people. Trust me, we know that.
But just to go back to what I said at the beginning of when we were talking, you guys are good at what you do. You've been good at what you do. And talking to different providers, I'm learning that many of you have been doing this for decades. So trust in that. Trust that you know how to do this, because you really do. You're just simply being asked to do it in a new way.
Okay.
That was the social work talk.
No, I know it was. That's okay.
Okay, because I do care.
You do care. Okay.
And Jim White just chimed in on the questions box and said ADA requires states to provide a full array of services, and if employees cannot meet productivity standards of business, then business doesn't have to employ. Person-centered informed choice of service and setting. What happens after 2019? With a smiley face.
I don't know. What are you going to do? Let's wait and see what 2017 brings us, Jim. That's why it's a plan for a plan. Don't feel like you have to own it all the way through. Seriously, I mean, it sounds silly with the way I'm saying my words, but I'm serious. We have to take this just like we talk about one day at a time. Have a plan for a plan. That's all. Don't overthink this, otherwise you'll drive yourselves crazy. Okay? This question alludes to the same kind of thing. If transition has already occurred, and meaning transition from a work center to other things, is it necessary to cover this aspect in the proposal? I did specifically ask this question of Ceylon, and I was told yes, and encourage agencies to brag about how they did it and why they did it and how well it's working. So yes, you do need to answer that section, and it's specifically, again, towards what Jill was just saying, and we've been talking about the regs around, did everybody get to have their choice? Did you actually work through all the things with the individual people as you were making these changes? You didn't just say, okay, today we're not doing this anymore, so Tom, Dick, and Harry are now, instead of their being over here doing packaging this, they're going to be packaging this over here in the new company. So they want to guarantee that you didn't just pick them up from one place and move them to another place, and they're doing exactly the same thing, and no choice, no discussion, no person-centeredness planning was involved. That won't fly. So you still have to demonstrate that that's what you've done. That's the answer to that one. Questions? Thoughts?
And, you know, for those of you who have completed a transition and feel that it's been successful or want to share some of the challenges, you know, just speak up, because I think you will be really helpful to a lot of the other providers who are struggling with this now.
Absolutely. And I would anticipate that Ceylon will indeed, she has already done, OPWD has done 2 of those best practice type webinars. Initially when we were even moving into this whole discussion, if you recall, they had, you know, they invited people who were already on top of different kinds of things to share with others the ideas that they have. So it would be an opportunity for you to serve as a mentor. Keep in mind too that we, under the BIP project, have the ability as well for mini grants. If you have a project idea or you're working on something and you are interested in being potentially a mentor of what your change is as it goes forward, we can explore that with you as well. Okay, our next question speaks to, and this is from Jim, if paying an employee minimum wage in a transformed business, does the business have to offer benefits, health, and retirement? My reaction to that, Jim, is if you're offering it to the entire, whatever the business decides is good for all the employees becomes what's good for all the employees. So my sense here is in your transformed business, meaning you are doing a different kind of something that you were doing before, if the job descriptions are calling for a minimum wage and benefits, you have to. If not, at least perhaps your HR department is able to talk to them about what they can purchase under ACA, so that at least you're still offering. And Jill has indicated, you know, and we want to reinforce on December 16th, we have our last hurrah event that we're doing. Joan Marie Dowling will be there to present on all these kinds of employee, employer responsibilities, what to do, whether they're interns or volunteers or employees or not-for-profits, for-profits. What is the general gist of all of the requirements of you as a business now, as an employer of people at minimum wage, and what does that mean? So she'll be talking about all of that on the 16th. And if I could, I'm going to take a moment here because we are desperately making sure that this event on the 16th is actually at a time that works for most of you. There's about 40 of you still on the call. And I would really, Kate, I don't know if you can put up a quick poll for us, but perhaps you could let us know, is this date, December 16th, could it work? Will it work? If, you know, many of you may or may not be, you know, deciding yet, but if you were considering participating, is that date working, or would it be better for us to think about moving it to January? I just don't, we're putting up quite a bit of resources for the 3 speakers that are part of this event on the 16th. While I love the 20 people that have signed up so far, and I don't want to slight you on anything, it doesn't make sense for us to hold an event at a time when the majority of the people can't find their way to Albany because it's a bad date in your calendar. It's right before the holidays and all that stuff. So if you would let us know whether or not you'd prefer, you'd consider attending if we move this towards the end of January, I would greatly appreciate that from a business perspective, as well as offering you guys something to do. Now, yes, does it seem weird that we're going to offer it after your plan is due? You know, it's not this targeted, right? This event is not meant to be the answers to your questions for the proposal. It is an ongoing approach to how will you handle person-centered planning, how will you handle Department of Labor's rules and regs around these kinds of things, and last but not least, how will you evaluate yourself as well as the organization that you work for in a systems change approach, right? So,
right. Well, I think it speaks to what you're saying, that you know, you're going to be submitting a plan for a plan, you're going to get a response from OPWTD. This will help you refine that plan for a plan, and it'll probably also bring you into the next step where you're starting to implement some of the things that you have planned to do. And just to go back for a minute to Jim's question, Jim, this is, again, that place where you're going to be separating out whose rules you're following. So when you have a transformed business, your HR department is really going to be tasked with developing employment policies for all the employees. And I would refer you to the DOL, the federal DOL website, as well as the New York State DOL website. Look at the Fair Labor Standard Act. Those are going to be your rules and regulations for the business, as opposed to a certified site where you would be providing HCBS services, which again, that's under Medicaid. So remember, we're talking about Medicaid, we're talking about Department of
One
Labor.
of the things that Mary Haven is considering, if I might, Jim, and others that might be there, is that they have a number of different departments under a social enterprise model is what they're looking at. And so I would suspect that part of what also plays out here is deciding whether or not employees are employees of the enterprise as a whole or employees of each one of the separate departments run by a contract. And again, that's something that I can make sure that Joan Marie talks to in regards to breaking it up. If you are, your entity is going to invite, as Abilities First has, and a couple of others, people to work on your, rent your space or be, a partner in the business entity that happens under the umbrella, as Mary, of a social enterprise. How does this whole issue around labor and health and retirement and all those kind of benefits fit into that mix? We will definitely make sure that Joan Marie speaks to that. And again, it's not saying it's going to happen on the 16th. We want you to tell us if the 16th works or not, or should we push this off and let you just focus on getting your proposals done, working with Jill and I as you need it, and then we bring you this other set of information later, because you don't have to have it all decided by January 6th. So please let us know if it would be better for us to postpone this at a time when more of you can take advantage of it than using the 16th. Okay? We have two more questions. We're a little bit over on time, but I'm seeing people haven't left us, so they must like what we're saying, Jill.
I think they just like our picture.
I think so. I think they're funny. Note my neon green eyebrows. I promise you that's not true. So update on the latest regarding work center transformation. I'm not sure, Evelyn, if there's anything more specific that you want here, but I think we've covered as much as we possibly can through this whole panel presentation here for you. If there's something we've missed, please type in or open up your line and say hello and let us know. They're pretty silent over at OPWD. They're just expecting you to complete the proposal as it was submitted or asked for, and that's it. And we don't have much more on that. Even when we, truth be told, when Jill and I asked them, are we hitting the mark? Are you doing anything? Tell us what you're doing to make sure that we're not duplicating it. How else can we help people that you are expecting or you're hearing questions? And we didn't get any kind of direction. So you tell us what you need and we'll see if we can build it for you is what it comes down to. So right now we just believe that you should be earmarking the 6th as a way to get your proposals in, and if you have questions or concerns, seek our resources or us to ask at least our opinion, and we'll be happy to help you. Honestly, I don't think there's a pass or a fail on this. There's not a grading of an A or whatever. It's just a matter of submitting it and helping them understand what's going on at your organization. So that's the latest that we have, right? Okay. The last question we have, unless more of you have something to share with us in the, during the call here, is how should we be determining the percentage disabled versus non-disabled? I have no idea. Plain and simple. So I think this will definitely be a question. That's why we left it at the end. And I apologize, Kath. I can't give you that answer, but my sense is you're still stressing over whether you'll be choosing pure sheltered workshop, A, 40%, or B, 75%, and whether or not you're still connecting that to your pre-vote determination. I'm going to highly encourage you to decide what your business model is and how many FTEs do you need to create the job capacity or the end capacity to meet the expectation of the job for the contract, and then look at who can make that work for you in your present workforce. And we could talk more about if all of them are people with disabilities, then, you know, oh, well, there's a different kind of story. If only 20% of them are people with disabilities, and disabilities meaning developmental disabilities, because remember, in the May 27th compared to the December guidance 15, they purposely, we got them to remove the fact that it had to be disabled as a general, because that was against ADA. People with developmental disabilities can certainly and should be allowed to work next to anybody they want to, even if it's other people with disabilities. Shame on them for saying it that way. I don't think that was their intent, but they went there. So that's why the May 27th speaks specifically to the percentage of people with developmental disabilities, because that's really the only group of people that they can scrutinize on as OPWDD.
And if I could just
Please.
take that a step further.
Yeah.
So because of ADA, people don't have to disclose if they have a disability.
Right.
So if you have somebody who's working in your business who may have a disability but doesn't need employment services that you are delivering, that person, for all intents and purposes, at least from my perspective,
Yes.
is not counted as disabled.
That's correct.
And it's the same with somebody who may have a mental health disability but who's not receiving services within the capacity of your business.
Right.
You're not delivering services to that person. That person is working independently. For all intents and purposes under ADA, that person isn't disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that whole idea of, you know, breaking loose from that Medicaid addiction, breaking loose from the definitions that OPWDD has imposed on situations is really going to be your pathway to developing this transformation.
The other challenge, though, that goes along with this is for those agencies, and this agency in particular I know has a number of New York State industry set aside. And so you're still dealing with the 75-25 ratio and figuring that out. I think you would be potentially safe with using the guidelines that have been given to you through that process, as well as Ability One. And but I still will, we will pose this question directly to Ceylon in order to see what kind of an answer they give you. Ultimately, I don't think you're going to be satisfied with it. So I would honestly, good.
Kathy Coogan wrote in the questions box, and Kathy, your mic is unmuted if you want to chime in, but she said Ceylon reported at the day services providers meeting that it's not FTEs, but a percent of bodies once a year. And then Katie Demuth just chimed in and said Ceylon had mentioned it would be a head count annually at the NYS DSP meeting recently, but the attendees expressed that it should be FTEs. She made it sound like it was still up in the air.
She's definitely, hi, it's Kathy. She's definitely considering that. She doesn't want it. She was adamant to say that it's not FTE. She doesn't want to go down that route. So she's very open to what we suggest to her on that whole thing, I think.
Okay. Well, you know, part of this is, thanks, the reaction from OPWDD is that they've been reminded a couple of times that they're not the Department of Labor. And so when you use terminology like FTE, full-time equivalents, that is a labor measurement, right? I mean, that's how business decides things. And they don't want to decide business. They literally want to do a count because they want to make sure that if the total number of people, physical bodies that work in this environment are 100, and 75 of the 100 are people with developmental disabilities, it will not meet the home and community-based settings waiver rule. And that's how they're doing it. So that's what you got to separate out the business side, as Jill was saying, with the Medicaid side. It sucks and it's not easy to figure it out, but that's where you're at if you want to, under the same umbrella, under the same roof, be a employer of people with disabilities and offer them a Medicaid support service under the same house. You'll struggle with this. And they haven't put out the ADM, and I don't think there's going to be one. So we have to wait and see what's going to play out, which again sucks. I apologize. It just does. So make it a plan for a plan. Okay. Thank you, Kath. Thank you, Kath. Katie and Kathy. All right.
So this is our resource explosion. Just kind of reviews some of the things that we're going to be offering. I think it's going to be a very informative day, and hopefully, Kate, have people responded on that poll?
I'm sorry, Jill, what was that?
Caitlin, have people responded on the poll about whether that date is convenient?
Well, 57% of the people that were on at the time responded that 43% said that December 16th worked for them, and 57% said please move to January. So.
Okay.
Okay, so we have been in touch with the people who are offering, who are consultants who are going to be offering these classes, and we're looking at dates in January.
Yeah.
I realize that coming close to the holidays, it's a really busy time. But we have some great people who are going to be presenting. Carol Blessing is going to be talking about tools for practice. For those of you who have been lucky enough to hear her present, she really gives some very concrete and specific tools for person-centered planning, and I think that'll be really helpful to you as you do that person-centered planning, person-centered discovery process. Jo Marie Dowling is an attorney, and she will speak to Department of Labor rules, how to integrate volunteers, interns, contractors into your business. She'll also be answering questions about benefits, minimum wage.
One of the big things that I did ask her, notwithstanding what we learned, we just committed to today with her, the contractor piece, that's the 1099 and the IRS letter ruling and how to play that all out. She's diligently researching all of that, so we should have some specific kind of ideas around if your organization right now has under contract your workforce and your workshop, and you want to transition or do something or keep it that way, can you, can't you, what does it mean, and all that kind of stuff. So she will be talking about that as well.
And then finally, trusting the process. This is going to be offered by Dave Eckert. So those of you who are rehab counselors know about the stages of change, and it was brought to my attention by someone who works at Gateway that our organizations are also going through stages of change in this transformation, and Dave is going to speak to that very specifically. And he's also going to be doing some activities around what we're calling the Medicaid matrix, because as Pat has said, and I've begun to say as well, we're addicted to Medicaid. We begin our thought process with looking at Medicaid, what is Medicaid providing, and Dave is going to help us to break that addiction.
And if you have never watched, or maybe you are a huge fan of the Matrix movies with Keanu Reeves, you're in for a treat, because this design of that, the last part of the day is based on some of the things that have been actually developed around curriculum to college level educators around the matrix, and what is the matrix, and whether you will choose the red pill or the blue pill. So it should be a fun day of learning, and just reminding you again, as Jill said before, that you all know how to do this. You're just being pushed against a wall thinking that you have to have a final plan design, and if we say it once, we'll say it 50 more times. This is a plan for a plan. And it's a process, and it is not intended by January 6th that you will have it all figured out. And that is hard a lot of times for us as rehab people, because we write plans and we create measurements and we look for compliance and all the things that have been, forced on us, and instead we're asking you to break it apart and figure it out. It may mean that people choose to leave and seek different kinds of jobs, which for leaders, oh my gosh, now who will do this? There are people out there that want jobs in this field, trust me. They may not necessarily understand it all, but you're, again, good at what you do, and see it as an opportunity at the same time that you're challenged by the change. So we will keep the poll open for a little bit. If you haven't reacted to the poll about the 16th, let us know. Otherwise, we'll work from there. And then we'll see you on December 6th. If you have, again, with the answers, hopefully, to all of these questions from OPWD, as well as if you have others to share with us or things that might come up as we visit sites. We can only, again, encourage you, oh, it's not the 6th, it's December 8th, sorry. We also want to encourage you to complete the ESTA tool and submit it to CCSI. It is the trigger for all the other consultants that are available under the project. While we sit here and tell you not to focus on Medicaid, unfortunately the BIT money is Medicaid, and we needed something to trigger the ability to give out all the rest of the money, and that's what that tool is. So it will definitely help you complete the proposal as well as give you some ideas that maybe you hadn't thought about before, because it's kind of encouraging you to all sit around as a team. So any last thoughts from you, dear?
Just, please feel free to reach out to us by email or by phone. It's usually easier to reach me by email. Pat, I think, is probably in the office more frequently.
That doesn't mean I ever answer my phone, so
But,
send an email.
Send an email, and my motto is transformation never sleeps, so
Right.
we will get back to you as soon as we can, which is sooner rather than later.
It truly is. And if you have draft proposals, don't hesitate to send us the whole Megillah. Just did one for an agency that was almost 30 pages. Not a problem. Send it to us. That's what we're here for, so let us know. Any other last questions from the group?
Just so everybody knows really quick, a couple of things coming up. Transformation 2.0 is holding a couple of webinars through the end of November. One in particular is happening tomorrow, so if you head over to the NYSER website by clicking the link that's in the PDF of our PowerPoint today, it's right there on that last slide. It says resources, visit our website. Click on that link, it'll bring you to the Transformation website, and you can see and register for all of our upcoming webinars. There is also a link right on this slide about still have questions for Thursday, December 8th, Jill and Chat. That link right there, you click that register here, and you can register to join us for the next Jill and Chat that we're going to do in a couple of weeks. We're going to have a survey after the end of this to find out how effective you guys felt that this conversation was, and I think that is it. So,
any last thoughts from people that are still on? Otherwise, thank you for hanging on there for another half hour, and we'll talk to you soon. Take it easy.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.